We have several new subscribers and viewers of late, and one of those new subscribers is Kung Pao Noodle, who is relatively new to investing and wants to know how to make bank. Well, KP Noodle came to the right channel. What we try to do here is make consistent profits but with limited risk. One may not get rich quick, but this is the best way I know how to get rich. Here, we try to learn how to be smart and patient and let the others do the heavy lifting for us. Now, another subscriber, the Piano Man, has asked me about Kimberly Clark. With that, I figured that I would combine the two because successful investing is like a good recipe. And so what you see here is a bowl of Kung Pao noodle with a bit of Kimberly Clark spice. So, let's take a look. Kimberly Clark recently came out with quarterly earnings of $1.69 per share, beating consensus estimates of about $1.61 per share, which is slightly down from earnings of $1.71 per share a year ago. However, over the last 4 quarters, the company has surpassed consensus earnings per share estimates 3 times. Kimberly Clark posted revenues of $4.84 billion for the quarter ending December 2020, surpassing consensus estimates by just over 2%. This compares to year-ago revenues of $4.58 billion. Moreover, the company has topped consensus revenue estimates 4 times over the last 4 quarters. One important metric to me is free cash flow. In this regard, Kimberly Clark had $2.51 billion of free cash flow in 2020. At the same time, it paid out $1.45 billion in dividends. So Kimberly Clark has a good payout ratio. Equally important is that the forward annualized dividend is about 3.44%. So an investor can collect cash while waiting. Kimberly Clark shares have gone sideways since the beginning of the year versus the S&P 500's gain. So, when will Kimberly Clark kick in? Let's take a look at the charts. So for the new subscribers and viewers here, basically the recipe is to start out with a chart like this, which is the 20-year monthly chart. From the monthly chart, you move to the weekly chart to fine-tune, and you can fine-tune that even more with the daily chart. Today we're just going to look at the monthly and the weekly, and you'll get the idea. So we're looking at a 20-year monthly chart on Kimberly Clark, and the symbol is KMB, and for disclosure purposes, I do not hold any shares of KMB at this time. So from 2009 all the way up here to the current time frame, we've had a pretty good run. Now we're at 133.03, the close on Monday. And right now, if you can see here, the price is just reflecting off of that 50 EMA. I'm not sure if it's going to hold here, but I think it wants to try to set a bottom and a base here. Now we did come through once and twice here before, back in 2018 when it was very weak. But for the most part, you can see that it rides along and then it picks up speed and rides along the 20 EMA, came back down here, of course, and then on up. So we'll have to see if we can bottom and base at the 50 EMA. Now, moving down into the volume looks fine. And here into the MACD, we see that the fast line has come through and is heading on down pretty quickly. There's a pretty big separation between the fast line and the slow line there, which means just about anything can happen. But we are above that zero line, which means that there's plenty of strength here. So hopefully it'll have the strength to bottom and base here. We only have a slight bend in the fast line, so that's not much of a sign that things are bottoming and basing. But if we move down here into the histogram, you can see that these two lines here are pretty even at -2. So that is the beginning stages of a bottoming and basing there. So this thing has to evolve, but at least we have some initial signs. Also in the price rate of change, you can see some sawtoothing going on down here. It doesn't want to go below that, at least not yet. And so while it's moving sideways before it decides to head on up, I think perhaps the price may move sideways as well too. But we're near that zero line, so there is some reasonable strength. Reasonable strength in the RSI at a moderate 46.15. Also at this level here within striking distance of that mid or 50 line, which means that perhaps there's some strength left and maybe enough to get some steam and head on up. Moving on down here into the stochastics, a little bit of a bend in the fast line, not much, but again, near the midline, so there's some strength left. Here into the Williams. Williams is heading on down, not showing us much. Unfortunately, I'd like to see something in the Williams, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Again, this is the monthly chart, and things take time to evolve. One last look before we go to the weekly chart. And so to refine the process, we move here to the 2-year weekly chart. And you can see here that from that top at about 160, we're definitely heading on down here, but it does look like it wants to bottom and base in this area here and maybe even head on up. It's tried to go back up through the 20 EMA there and has been reflected back down, but it's going to give it another attempt here very soon, in my opinion. Here, volume looks fine. We had a pretty good sell-off, say, last week, but that was last week. Moving here to the MACD, you can clearly show that the fast line is bottoming and basing, and not only that, the fast line is shooting up and through the slow line, and we are at about negative 2.5 to 3, but that's still strong enough that we can turn up and head up. But once we cross through that zero line, things will really pick up. So right now we're still a bit early, but you know my timing. Here to the histogram, you have had plenty of time since November to see that things were improving. That's plenty of time to conduct your due diligence with the fundamentals. Moving on down here into the price rate of change, same thing. Nice dish there, heading on up almost to the zero line. Into the RSI, we're just a smidge below the 50 or midline, strengthening as we can see. Same thing with stochastics and with Williams. So from the weekly chart, things are looking really good, really nice. Now, sooner or later, the monthly chart will catch up. As I said, it needs time to evolve. From here, you would simply go to the daily chart to see how that looks. And if it looks good enough for you and you've done your fundamental research, you can pull the trigger at your liking. For me, I'm not quite ready to pull the trigger, but it's close enough that you could, especially if you have a long-term holding pattern, because you're going to be collecting some pretty good dividends on the way up. And I think Kimberly-Clark is on the way up, at least in my humble opinion. But you need to do your fundamental research. And for today, that's ChewDog Charts. Thank you.